Right now, artificial intelligence isn't just entering real estate, it's attempting a hostile takeover. You may have seen the headlines: Florida man sells home in 5 days using ChatGPT. Homeowner beats market by $100,000 using a bot. If you're a homeowner, that might sound like a dream. I mean, hey, who doesn't love saving a little bit of money here and there? And go ahead, say it in the comments. He's just protecting his job. Look, I get it. If a chatbot can actually make you an extra $100,000, you'd be crazy not to use it. But as someone who lives in the boring reality of things like contracts, inspections, and legal liability, I see some massive holes in the viral success stories that the headlines are conveniently skipping. I want to be clear here. If you think I'm about to give you a 10-minute lecture on why real estate professionals are still incredibly relevant and critical, we will skip that part. And it's not to say that they're not, we're just going to skip that. What we're not going to skip today are the facts, like large language models like ChatGPT or Gemini so often do. We're going to look at the real pros and the very scary cons, and the time that a multi-billion-dollar tech giant tried to let AI take over their pricing, and it ended up with an $800 million disaster. If you're thinking of letting a bot sell your home, you need to hear this first. So let's get into it right now. You only get one chance to buy or sell your next home. Let's get it right. Hey, worth mentioning, my name is Darren. I'm a real estate professional based right here in White Rock and the South Surrey area. And I've been helping families buy and sell homes here all the way back to 2007. And since then, I've worked with hundreds of people over the years, many of whom found me right here on this very YouTube channel. So if you're seriously thinking about making a move and want some smart local advice, zero pressure, just real insight, there's a link in the description below to book a time to speak with me and my team. And together, we'll help you make the right move with confidence. Okay, so what are we talking about here in today's video exactly? Well, let's look at the case study that everyone, at least in my industry, is talking about. A gentleman named Robert Levine. He's the homeowner in Florida who decided to skip the traditional listing route and essentially turn ChatGPT into his project manager. He didn't just ask it to sell my house. He used it to generate a room-by-room renovation list, deciding which walls to paint and what to fix to maximize value. He had it create a showing schedule and draft every single piece of marketing copy. The result? Well, allegedly, he listed on a Tuesday, had a contract by Sunday, and closed for more than $100,000 more than initial agent estimates. $100,000 more. I have to admit, without guilt, on paper, it's a total knockout win for the machine. And let's be frank here. AI has some massive benefits that even the most traditional agents have to acknowledge. First, the speed. You can get a listing description, a headline, and a social media campaign in 3 seconds. It never gets writer's block. Second is the logic. It's great at decoding complex paperwork or summarizing a 50-page strata document. It can take a dry legal paragraph and explain it to you like you're in the 5th grade. And third, it's great at scripting. It's a world-class assistant for drafting email replies to difficult buyers or comparing 2 different offers side by side based on raw numbers. If you're looking for a tool to help you organize your thoughts and polish your marketing, AI is incredible. It's basically a supercharged easy button for the administrative side of real estate. That is, as long as you understand its limits and know when to question its answers. But more on that in a second. So this story that we're unpacking here, here's what the viral tweets and the headlines didn't emphasize. Robert Levine didn't just hit a button and get a check. He still used a professional lawyer to review the final contracts, and he still used a professional service to get his home onto the multiple listing service, the very system that real estate professionals built. And it raises a big question. Did the AI sell the house, or did the AI just give a very motivated human the tools to do an agent's job for 80 hours a week? And more importantly, what happens when that easy button gives you the wrong answer? One man's success doesn't change the reality for hundreds or maybe even thousands who lose money or have lost it by trusting an algorithm over an expert. Think about it. Whether it's your financial portfolio, a legal case, or your home, you have to recognize the difference between using AI for creative play and using it for critical precision. In a world governed by laws and contracts, you don't need a confirmation machine. You need a professional who actually understands the guardrails. Let's look at the most famous automated valuation tool in the world, the one used by millions of people every day to check out their home's estimated value. Now, out of respect for the company, I'm not going to use their name in this video, but I'm going to give you a hint. For years, almost 15 years, in fact, it's been the biggest and most visited real estate portal for consumers in the United States. While it pulls data from the professional systems that realtors use every day, it is a public-facing algorithm, not a professional appraisal. This tool is powered by a company that's worth over $10 billion, with more data than almost anyone on the planet, specifically in the real estate realm. And yet, if you look at their own data, they admit a startling truth. For homes that aren't currently on the market, as an example, their median error rate advertised on their website for their version of a home price estimate is off by over 7%. Let's do the math on that. On a $500,000 home, a 7% oops is $35,000. On average, a home in Vancouver or Toronto, we're talking about $60,000 to $80,000. That isn't just a margin of error, that is a massive chunk of your home's equity vanishing because of a math mistake. For on-the-market homes, the margin of error still varies and is shown as a median because it's still significantly off when we consider how much the impact of even just 1 percentage point can be on the sale of a home, especially in a marketplace like ours. Now, it gets even more interesting when you look at the people who actually built this tech and have invested millions and millions of dollars into it, how it impacts their own lives. And I've got a really cool and fascinating story for you. But before we touch on that, if you're even thinking about buying a home, whether it's in the areas we serve of White Rock, Surrey, or the surrounding municipalities, it can be anywhere in BC, you're going to want to make sure that you grab a copy of our free PDF, 21 Grants and Rebates for Home Buyers. We pulled together every program that we could find, whether it's federal, provincial, or even niche local ones, plus tips, links, and quick ways to save that are often hard to find, buried, and made way too confusing. So we've sourced them out and put them into one single spot for you to take full advantage of. It's totally free and could save you thousands, so you can get it now by using the link in the description of this video below. Okay, so back to my story. In 2016, the then CEO of this tech giant, the one we've been talking about, sold his own home in Seattle. At the time, his own company's algorithm said that the house was worth about $1.75 million. Well, during that time when he sold it for $1,050,000. That is 40% less than the AI estimate. But it gets even better. Then in 2020, the very same person who co-founded that company bought a home in Los Angeles. Now, you'd think the man who built the algorithm would be the first person to use it, right? Well, you'd be wrong. He ended up paying roughly $7 million more than his own company's algorithm said the house was worth. He paid a 30% premium over the estimate generated by his own software. I want you to think about that. The people who have the most to gain by proving the AI works essentially proved that it doesn't. They knew that in a high-stakes market, a computer in a server room cannot account for things like prestige, the architecture, or the demand that a human expert sees. A year later, that very same company, we're still talking about the same company here, tried to use that same AI to buy houses at scale. It was a disaster because the AI relied on lagging data. What happened months ago, it couldn't see the market shift in real time. They ended up overpaying for thousands of homes, losing over $800 million in a single year and shutting down the entire division. Their CEO admitted that the unpredictability of home prices was something their AI simply couldn't handle. Now, the one thing that I want to get across here, the one point that I really want to have sink in, this was a real estate specific website with all of the data in the world, not like a general use tool like ChatGPT or Gemini. If the founder of the tech won't trust his own algorithm for his own personal home, and the company itself lost nearly $1 billion trying to follow it, why would you trust a general purpose chatbot to price your most valuable asset? AI is a calculator, not a crystal ball. In real estate, the things AI can't see, the neglected neighbor's yard, the vibe of the street, the specific renovation quality, are usually the things that cost you the most money. If you're going to use AI to sell your home, you have to understand that you aren't just using a tool, you're essentially hiring a digital intern who is incredibly confident, but has never actually stepped foot inside a house. Now, as an expert, I see three massive pillars of risk that most homeowners might not consider until it's too late. The first is the valuation gap. AI is a confirmation machine. You've used it, you've seen this. If you tell it your house is worth $1 million, it will find a way to agree with you. But it can't smell the pet odor in the carpet. It doesn't know the layout is choppy or that your 2018 renovation is already looking dated. It misses hyper-local context, like a new construction project 2 blocks away that's going to tank your street's quiet appeal. Trusting a bot to price your home is like asking a blindfolded person to judge a beauty pageant. Now, second, is the legal minefield. AI can explain a term, but it often oversimplifies it. In Canada, real estate law is intensely local, and what works in one province can be a deal breaker in another. A chatbot might give you a draft contract or draft a clause for a contract, but it takes zero responsibility if that clause has a loophole. It doesn't understand the subtle nuances of strata documents that might hide $1 million special assessment. If the AI hallucinates a legal fact and you sign it, you are the one on the hook in court, not the software. And finally, the third pillar is the negotiation blind spot. AI is a logic machine. Negotiation is human behavior. AI cannot read the room. It doesn't know if a buyer is desperate because their mortgage pre-approval is expiring or if they're just kicking tires. In that Florida story, the man claims to have gotten $100,000 more than what agents in the area quoted him. But was that because of the AI, or was it because he was maybe in a hot market where any listing would have flown off the shelf? Using generic AI tactics in a tough negotiation usually leads to one or two things. You either push too hard and kill the deal, nobody wins, or you fold too early and leave tens of thousands of dollars on the table. And let's go back for a moment to that 10% more figure, that $100,000 figure. It sounds like a miracle, right? But as a professional, I have to ask, which estimate? In real estate, an estimate isn't a single number. It's a range based on a strategy. If an agent tells you your house will sell for $850,000 as is, but you spend 3 weeks following an AI renovation list and staging it yourself, you didn't just find $100,000. You earned it through manual labor and capital investment. The AI didn't create that value. It just gave him a to-do list that any experienced local agent would have given him on day one. Now, the headline also makes him sound like a lone wolf with a laptop. But if you read the fine print, he has two very human, very traditional partners in this transaction. First, the lawyer. He used ChatGPT to draft a contract, but he paid a human lawyer to actually review and finalize it. Have you ever hired a real estate lawyer by the hour to go back and forth on a DIY contract? It's not cheap and it's charged by the minute. Between the drafting and the revisions, those hourly fees eat into your savings fast. And second, the multiple listing service. He didn't find his buyer on a chatbot. He paid a flat fee service to put his home on the multiple listing service, the massive database built and maintained by the very professionals he was trying to bypass. He didn't replace the system. He just cherry-picked the parts he wanted to pay for while doing the grueling 40-hour-a-week job of an agent himself, which is fine. But then there's also a claim in the article about a savings of 3%. Now, in most transactions, there are two sides to a fee for service. Even if you don't hire a listing agent, who do you think the buyer came from? Where did they come from? More likely than not, he still had to offer a buyer's agent their fees to get those 15 showings he claims to have had in the door, unless he expected every single buyer to have pre-negotiated their own representation's compensation, which of course is possible, but also incredibly rare. Buyer's agents are most commonly compensated by the seller through the sale price of the home for the simple reason that that's where the money is. The buyer wants to put all of their funds towards the home, but still wants to be professionally represented. So typically, the fee for assisting that buyer is tied into the sale price of the home, paid for by the seller out of their proceeds. Nowhere in the article does it mention if he paid for his own marketing professional, photography, or the holding costs of doing it all himself. When you add up the legal fees, the listing costs, the buyer's agent's fee for service, and the dozens of hours that went into his own time, that 3% savings that he's claimed to have saved starts to look a lot more like a break-even point, but with 10 times the personal risk. He didn't find a magic AI hack. He found a way to work a second full-time job for a few weeks and got lucky in a hot market. But What happens, let's say, if the buyer backs out? Or what happens if the inspection reveals a $20,000 foundation issue that the AI didn't warn you about? That's when the savings turn into a legal pitfall. You're seeing this story. It's being marketed everywhere because it worked. That's survivor bias. You aren't seeing the stories of the hundreds or even thousands of people who tried this, sat on the market for 6 months with zero offers, and eventually had to sell for less than they would have if they'd just started with a professional in the first place. For every Florida story success like this article, there are dozens of legal nightmares or flat out failures that don't make the news, which brings up a really curious question. How did this story even get to the media in the first place? Obviously, this gentleman reached out to share his win, and fair enough, he's proud of it, I get that. But as a professional, I really find it hard to believe that every local expert he consulted with was off on his home's value by over $100,000. That's more than 10% of the property's total value. If that's true, it just proves one thing. Who you talk to matters. In fact, it might be the only thing that matters, and I'll explain why that is in a moment. But let's be incredibly clear. If you choose to use AI as your primary guide, you are taking on a massive, unmitigated risk. Here's where ChatGPT, as an example, collects its information from. And this is taken from ChatGPT itself. It uses public internet content like articles, blogs, educational websites, forums, and general online content. It also has access to large data sets and licensed sources. It's got human-created training data and can source general patterns across many sources. It relies heavily on online discussions and forums, especially places like Reddit, where publicly available conversations help shape general understanding of how people think and talk. While some of that may sound somewhat positive, some of it should raise a level of concern. But here's the bigger level of concern to consider. Here's where LLMs don't get their information from. Again, right from ChatGPT. It doesn't take information from MLS systems. It doesn't use real-time market data. It has no access to private databases or brokerage systems. It doesn't know anything about your personal information or the situation. It has no context on live conversations between agents, buyers, or sellers. It has no way of knowing about any unpublished or behind-the-scenes deal details. Sounds like stuff that's pretty important, right? It's because it is. Well, here's the bottom line. A chatbot doesn't care if you overpay by $50,000. It doesn't lose sleep if a contract loophole leaves you tied up in a 3-year lawsuit. It's a prediction engine, not a protection engine. When you remove the human expert, you remove the only person in the room whose job is to stand between you and catastrophic mistake. Now, don't get me wrong. AI is going to play a bigger role in real estate. It's already helping us analyze data faster and market more efficiently, but a screen will never substitute for the professional advice of a local expert. Real estate isn't just about moving data points on a spreadsheet. It's about investigating the history of a property, understanding the subtle shifts in a neighborhood, and most importantly, negotiating between two emotional human beings to find an agreement that actually closes. An AI can give you a script, but it can't read the room during a heated counteroffer. It can't tell you that an inspection report just uncovered a red flag that should make you walk away entirely. That experience, the kind that only comes from doing hundreds of transactions on the ground, is something no algorithm can replicate. You wouldn't use a chatbot to perform your own surgery, and you shouldn't use one to DIY your family's largest financial asset. You want a partner who has the best tools available, but also has the human judgment to know when the tool is wrong. And if you want to know how to find a partner who actually knows your market and can protect your equity in this new AI-driven world, check out my next video on how to hire a real estate professional. We're going to go over the specific questions you need to ask to make sure you're hiring an expert, not just a middleman. Thanks for watching today's video, and I look forward to seeing you on that other video coming up right now. Finding the best realtor should not feel like you just lost your nephew in a crowded mall and you are turning over every single stone to relocate them.